Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Scream Signal podcast, where this won't hurt one little bit. I'm your co host, Jeff, and with me, as always, is Jeremy.
Hello.
We had a little bit of a shakeup this week, and as such, George won't be with us tonight. And in light of that, we're going to be delaying the originally announced topic of discussing Nick Cutter's The Troop until next week. But don't worry, we have plenty of stuff planned for you tonight. The show must go on, as they say. So, Jeremy, tell me, what is the scariest nightmare that you've had that you can remember?
So I think when I was a kid, I remember having a lot of, various nightmares. I watched a lot of horror movies. So obviously I think that typically just kind of goes with nightmares. But since I've been an adult, I think the scariest nightmares I tend to have tend to be home invasion nightmares because I think that's
Okay.
the kind of stuff that most frightens me. So I've had nightmares, where in my dream I wake up in the middle of the night with somebody like actively in the downstairs of my house, and I can hear them rummaging around, and I'm like desperately trying to find out how I can get, from my bedroom to my son's bedroom to make sure he's okay and like not alert this person. And that guys, I think that's the most terrifying dreams that I typically have are definitely home invasion dreams. And home invasion movies also similarly land for me a lot better than most things. So that's the stuff I have. What kind of nightmares do you have?
Well, so what's interesting is I'd say about 95% of what I have as nightmares are actually play out as like very real life scenarios that are just sad or dark. Like, a friend coming to me and telling me they have cancer, or me finding out like all my teeth are falling out or something like that. I don't really have like a lot of like monsters or killers chasing me or anything, but I did have one. I can't remember if I've talked about this on the show or not, but it's okay if I have. I'll just rehash it out here. But years and years and years ago, I had a little TV in my room when I was younger. I was probably, I don't know, between 10 and 12, I'd say, around this time. And like I said, I had a little TV in my room and I had cable. And my parents didn't really monitor what I watched very often. So I would end up watching some things that I probably should not be watching. And I remember at some point I was watching the HBO show Autopsy. Like it was like kind of a true crime thing about murders and things, and they were approaching it from like the coroner on Autopsy like approach in the investigation. And so you would see a lot of like real life crime scene photos and like autopsy footage. But I remember I'd seen this one that was about this. It's a very famous case, and of course, I didn't research this ahead of time, so you guys can go and Google this later if you want to find out what I'm talking about. But there was this doctor who had a lady who had died of the tuberculosis, and he was treating her. And after she died, he kind of paid for her to be interred in this mausoleum that he built, and he would go to visit her body or whatever. And eventually, he ends up bringing this woman home, and whenever her flesh would rot, he'd like rub like wax and stuff into it. So he ended up with this like human-sized doll thing that he would keep, you know. And on this show they showed this. So they showed like the people had gone and taken this body from him, and they were autopsying it. So it looked like this giant human-sized doll, which was horrifying in and of itself, and it scared the shit out of me as a kid. I should not have been watching that. Should not have seen that. And I don't think it was like immediately after I saw the episode that I had this dream. But at some point after that, I had this dream that I was walking down this like gravel road at night, and I saw the house from Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the distance. Like I saw it coming up, and I immediately knew like I'm not going there. Fuck that. I've seen that movie. I know what happens there. And that's another movie that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And so I turned to leave to go the opposite direction. And when I turned around, the doll woman thing was like standing there in the road.
Wow.
So like I woke up, and I'm like, holy shit. Like that was horrifying. Like, I'm glad that was just a dream. And I go to get out of bed to like get a glass of water, and the doll woman slides out from underneath my bed. And then I woke up again. And I was like laying in my bed, and I just at that point I just laid in the middle of my bed, like, and didn't move for the rest of the night because I was so scared. And I've never had a dream like that since. I'd never had a dream like that before. It's like something you see in a movie. But yeah, that messed me up pretty bad.
Yeah,
So that was
she was
probably the
probably
first.
definitely under your bed that night, so it's
I
probably good you
know.
didn't move.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm glad
yeah,
that.
I think that the doctor, the Carl Tanzler, the guy that made the human
Yeah, that's
doll.
it, Tansler.
Yeah, I think that picture gets posted a lot, like on the internet. If you Google Carl Tanzler, you'll very quickly see this picture of this human doll thing that he made. And it's still creepy to look at, no, because it doesn't look right. It does look so weird, and at first you wouldn't think much until it looks like almost like a paper mache or like something weird the way it's kind of deformed and like. But then
Mhm.
when you learn it's like a real human that is this weird paper mache looking thing with clearly like drawn on eyebrows and stuff that's like a little misshapen. It's like, oh god, it's a real human that he had like in his bed like this. And it truly is a horrifying picture once you know like the
That's
full
right.
story of it.
So yeah, definitely Google that with caution, and just
Yeah.
know that it's stuff you might not be able to unsee.
Yeah.
Well, moving on from that, tangentially that will be related to something we talk about in a little bit here. But what have you been watching this week, Jeremy? Anything good?
So this last week, I don't know if we've mentioned on the podcast with viewers before, but I'm preparing to move soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been watching as much as I normally would. I did watch recently a local horror movie out of Indianapolis called Circle City Supernatural. It's kind of like a anthology film about a radio show host where people call in and tell her like the scary stories that have happened to them, and then it kind of shows those scary stories on the screen, and they kind of all start to come together and in a weird meta way with like that's related to the show. So that was interesting, and I met the director at Days of the Dead in Indianapolis a few weeks ago and bought it from him. So I enjoyed it. I think there's two of them actually now. They're free on Tubi if you want to check them out. Circle City Supernatural. So that's the one thing I really watched this week. Other than that, I did check out Big Baby by Spider One.
Oh yeah, cool. I also saw that one. What'd you think of Big Baby?
I think it's a decent movie. I'll say. I think there's interesting ideas here, and I think it's well acted. I really do think that Brandon Scott, who plays the main character in it, this kind of uh director who he's just becomes kind of obsessed with the idea of criticism of his movies at the start, and he's very like bad at taking that criticism and kind of devolves into madness as the movie goes on. Brandon Scott's great in the movie, I think, and I think Chrissy Fox did good in it as his like partner. Um, but it just there was something tough about it that didn't land, and I thought it took a really long time to get going.
Hmm. Yeah. So this one, I don't know how many people know. Uh, Spider One is Rob Zombie's brother. He's also the lead singer of Power Man 5000, lead man of Power Man 5000. I remember hearing that he was directing movies. It was a few years ago. He did a movie. Let me look it up real quick. It was Allegoria, which was I think this was back in 2022. It was like a an anthology, and so I'm a big sucker for anthologies. And when I heard that Spider One was directing it, that was interesting to me because I was a Power Man 5000 fan. I'm a Rob Zombie fan. I like anthology horror movies. I thought I would check it out. And I remember I liked it, but it definitely felt like an early movie in somebody's career, like which it was for him. But it felt like something where they're learning and they're getting better. But the quality was a lot better than you'd expect, I think, for something that was somebody's first outing. And so far, I've seen everything he's done. I've seen Bury the Bride. I've seen Little Bites. Now Big Baby. And he's been doing about a movie a year since 2022, and I think he's very adept in a lot of ways. Like the movies feel believable, the acting's good, the lighting's good, everything looks good. He's obviously got some connections. He's got some famous, and this one had uh, Chad Bono's in it. I feel like there's somebody else I recognized at one point too. But he's got a lot of friends that come in and out, which is cool. Um, with Big Baby, I feel like there's some cool ideas here. Like I like the idea of a director who is like trying to give birth in a way to this idea that they have, putting their heart and soul into it, and the way that people sort of interact with that can be hurtful. Like people, like his girlfriend giving him criticism, like makes him feel like stupid or inferior somehow. If the guys on the podcast, there's some like podcasters were talking crap about us, which is funny because that's what we were doing here. Talking crap about the director's movie, and he's the way he feels about that and how he interacts with them. A lot of it, as creative people, it resonates. Like I understand where he's coming from with all these things, but it almost feels like Big Baby is two different movies, and they don't mesh well together. There's a movie in there that what the titular Big Baby is. He's writing a slasher movie about this, this man with brain damage who puts on like a baby mask and goes around and kills people. There's that movie, which is like a slasher type thing, and there's also this kind of meta commentary about being a director, being an artist, like the criticism, it's kind of Secret Window-esque. Where like, is this happening? Is this not happening? Is it all in this guy's head? Is he doing it? But they don't. I feel like the ideas. I'm not sure if like maybe I just because I'm not him, I can't see where he was going with it exactly, or if maybe there's just still some stuff that needs to be like maybe somebody else in the writing room would have helped to hash it out a little better. It was almost there, but not quite. And I think that it was probably about 20 minutes too long for this kind of movie.
It was, and I felt like it didn't do a lot to build up the character beforehand because, like,
right,
I wasn't sure if it was at parts if he was criticizing actual internet culture because, like, the two podcasters at the beginning of this movie are like over the top. They're like, "Hey, if you wrote this movie, you should kill yourself," like that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's insane, like those things they're saying. But then later on, we see like his partner, his girlfriend, reads his script, and she's like, and you can tell that apparently, or at least it seems to be hinting at the fact that she knows he's really sensitive about any criticism because she's like, it's really good. Then he's like, what do you really think? And she's like, oh, do you really want to know? Like, so it's clear that she knows he's really sensitive. And at one point she says something like, so what if you don't ever win an Academy Award? And he spins that into being like, you think I suck and I'll never win an Academy Award.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so they kind of make him almost like he is overly sensitive. And they also have people saying like insane shit to him. So like, I don't know if like you were trying to convey that he's overly sensitive or that criticism culture is so harsh that it does make you drive you slowly insane, or like what your point is here, because it just the ideas weren't like really well constructed to be like clear in what his intention was in a lot of this, I think. So
yeah, that's kind of where I landed with it too. I wasn't exactly sure if he was condemning like critical culture, if he was condemning like artists who can't handle it. It felt like a little bit of both, and maybe that was kind of where the point he was trying to make is that there is truth on both sides. Like I don't know, but again, like I didn't think it was a bad movie, and I'm going to keep watching the stuff he does. I'm very interested in what he's doing. I think he's like I said, I think he's very adept, and I think he's got some cool ideas. He's trying things I think are a little bit different, especially the movie he did, Bury the Bride. I think that's probably the one that had the coolest like concept so far that he's done, where this lady gets married or is getting married, and on her bachelorette party night, this guy and all his friends show up to this cabin they're staying in. And it turns out they're all like vampires, and he has to kill this girl before his like the wedding as part of this like ritual. And I'm like, that's much different than anything I've ever seen before. That's cool. So I like that he's trying new things and doing different stuff. So I'm definitely going to be on board with what he does next. And this, again, I think this movie might be something that will really resonate with some people. I feel like a younger me who saw this might have like really seen a lot of cool ideas I hadn't like grappled with yet, and and it might be inspiring. So I think it's a worthy watch.
There's definitely enough. There's enough good in here to say that like you definitely want to follow whatever he makes next, and it is worth watching because there's a lot of cool stuff in it. There's a lot of cool scenes in it. There's a lot of cool effects in it. So it's not a bad movie. It just didn't land for me 100%, and I felt like there was some stuff that wasn't clear.
For sure, yeah, I can agree with that. So, anything other than that, or that made mostly what you got it to this week?
No, other than that, I watched Hundreds of Beavers that I picked up on Blu-ray, and that's just not horror, but just one of the greatest movies ever made.
It's a very weird movie, so yeah, maybe it falls into horror adjacent. It's a pretty strange, like a living cartoon.
Yes, I love it. So,
Yeah, so like I said, I'd also seen Big Baby, but like the only other thing I really saw that isn't something that's going to come up on another episode of the pod, so I have to avoid talking about it today. But I watched Pitfall that came out this year, 2026. This one is directed by James Kondalik or Kondelic, and it stars Marsha Williams, Alexandra Esso, who I really like, and Richard Harmon. This one, okay, so when I saw this being talked about, I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be like a movie version of the video game Pitfall. I wasn't sure. I knew it was like a horror movie ish, but I didn't know much about it other than that. And it's essentially about a group of people who go camping together or hiking camping, and one of them falls into this deep 10-foot like spike trap, and it's like trapped down there, and the other ones are kind of dealing with the guy who set the trap, who's like this wilderness killer who's kind of tracking them down and playing like hunting type games with them. And like I like the premise of this a lot. Like I like the idea of somebody out in the wild who like kind of knows how to deal with the land and track and that sort of thing better than the people who don't. He's sort of doing like the whole most dangerous game sort of thing. But like, what was interesting about this one is, number one, it was almost 2 hours long. And I can tell you it was almost a half hour too long in terms of that. Like it just took, there were a lot of scenes that felt recycled. Like I kept watching, they'd cut back to the guy in the pit and he'd be down there like reliving like memories from his past and, I'm in this pit. I'm talking to this recorder, tell everybody I'm in this pit. And then it would cut to the people like arguing about what they should do. And like a lot of that could have been cut down a lot and it would have made this movie move faster. It would have felt a little better. Alexandra Esso's by far the highlight of the movie. Like she was in Starry Eyes, which is a movie I really, really like. I think we've talked about that before on the pod. Really, really awesome movie. She's a great actress. She couldn't really bring this movie up to where I think it needs to be some kind of classic. Like I don't think anybody would be mad they watched this. Like it's not like a terrible movie that's unwatchable, but it is going to feel like stuff you've seen before without a whole lot of anything extra. And the edges are a little like rough in terms of like some of the sound effects feel very canned and cheesy. Like there are like when there's always pulling an axe out of a tree, it sounds like some kind of like video game, like swords against each other kind of sound that doesn't really fit. Yeah, like I said, I wanted this to work better. Almost, again, this is another one of those, I hate to say this, we were just talking about this. It feels almost like two different movies. Like maybe there's a movie somebody wrote about a guy who falls into a pit trap, like kind of like one of those like singular room type things. And then there's also a movie about this guy hunting people through the woods, and they kind of try to smash those movies together. And because of that, neither of them really stand out.
Yeah, I
It's a,
do wish, like, when you're talking about these things that are overly long like this and they have so much going on, like, I do think this is just like a flaw of this expectation now that every movie has to hit 2 hours, and it's like, if we brought back the 90-minute movie, you don't have to do all this.
right. I mean, I think I understand that sometimes, I can say from experience when we made our movie, you write things and you don't always understand when you're writing it how long that's going to be on film.
Yeah.
Like I think that when you write it out, you're thinking, oh man, I need to write like so much more. This is gonna be a really short movie. But like basically every page that you write is like almost like a full minute or more of like movie. And when you start to think about that, you can get really carried away with like conversations that are just too long. That and the problem with the movie is you kind of want to move, especially if you're not, let's say, on the caliber of somebody like Scorsese, where you can know when something really can breathe and it works. But even people like Scorsese, I think a lot of times somebody could come in there and tell them to cut that down a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just in general, and like I think you're right. I think we've gotten into a weird phase of long movies, and now there's just either people feel like emboldened to keep their movies long, or they don't want to kill their darlings and they don't want to like cut things here and there when they probably should. Yeah, I mean, it can be a hard thing to do, but yeah, this movie would have been a whole lot better if it had been shorter, like a whole lot better.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a lot of movies I see that I feel that way about. Like if you cut these down to a 90-minute movie, you have something really fucking solid a lot of times.
yeah. Yeah, but I think, this director, I think he had done a few things. Most of it looks like pretty low budget stuff. So I definitely wouldn't avoid anything he did in the future. I'd be interested to see if he did something else and maybe, sharpened a little bit. Alexandra Esso's good. I'll keep watching her and everything. This is not a bad watch. If you tend to be the ones that like that, survival wood slasher type thing, this might be one for you. There were a couple of cool scenes in it, but mostly I think that my final verse it was just too long. But okay, so the couple of things I wish we had a lot more positive stuff that we watched this week to talk about up front. But why don't we? Well, we're going to segue into. We've been doing a segment, and this will probably be the last podcast of the year where we do this segment because we're kind of starting to move into spooky season now. But the segment we've been doing is we've been talking about summer horror movies, like movies that evoke summer. And last time we were doing our planning, we picked Final Destination because I think all three of us felt like it was like a summer movie. And what's interesting is while watching the movie and doing the research on the movie, I realized that it's not really like it. I think the movie's set in like May. It's like set during kind of like the last month or so of school, and the kids are going on this trip to Paris. So it's sort of summer. What's even funnier about that is that I feel like the movie honestly feels more fallish in its color palette and like what it shows. Which again is funny that we all thought summer when we watched it. So what I'm going to say here is that this is probably not 100% technically a summer horror movie, and that's okay. We're not perfect. We try to be. I do think that the vacation they're taking, the trip they're taking, feels kind of summer vacation-y, and with it being like the last month of school. And I believe it's also released like April, May of the year 2000. So for us, when we were in, back then would have been in high school. Uh, it probably it just evokes that idea. So we're gonna roll with it.
Yeah, I think you can. It's hard to say if it's supposed to be summer or not because
Right.
there's an indeterminate amount of time that passes between the car crash, I mean the plane crash, and then stuff kicking off in the pickup story after the plane crash. So it's like, is this summer or are we all the way to fall? So this is a transitional movie between seasons, and that's what we're doing now for the
Exactly.
podcast also.
Exactly. So this will be the last one, and also this is just a fun one to talk about. So we'll kick in this off. Final Destination, released in the year 2000. This one was directed by James Wong, who at that time was really known mostly for directing episodes of X-Files.
And
It was
writing Trick or Treat.
right, and this was written by Wong, Jeffrey Reddick, and Glenn Morgan, starring Devon Sawa, Ali Larter, Kerr Smith, Kirsten Cloak, Sean William Scott, Daniel Roebuck, and Tony Todd. The plot revolves around Alex Browning and his classmates who are about to embark on a trip to Paris when Alex has a premonition the plane he is on is going to explode, causing several students and their teacher to disembark just before the plane does take off and explode. Now the survivors are being picked off one by an unseen force, and Alex must unravel Death's plan to survive. So before we get too deep into our stuff here, what's your general thoughts on Final Destination?
I mean, I liked this movie when it came out. I still like this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. Is my general take on it, and I think
Yeah.
this movie was important for a generation of people, and this series as a whole made a generation afraid of certain things.
Sure, especially the next one.
Yeah.
I think my take is very similar. I remember when this came out, I saw the trailers for it, and what was interesting, if I remember right, the trailers didn't do a very good job, and in a way, it's a blessing. But I don't think the trailers did a great job of telling you exactly what the movie was going to be. So I saw a bunch of hot teen actors who were in a lot of stuff at that time, and it had that slick late 90s early 2000s look to it. And at first I wrote it off. I was like, yeah, this is going to be another one of those screen clone type movies that I was at this point was getting tired of. And I was also, again, we've talked about this before, I was a very serious high schooler who thought I was so much cooler and more evolved than everybody else, which is stupid. So I didn't see this at least for like a year. I think when it came out, I didn't see it. It wasn't until other people really started to talk about it and like talk about how cool it was that eventually I'm like, okay, maybe I'll rent it. And I rented it and really thought it was great. So I think this one does stand out in that era of stuff because it does have a lot of those elements of that kind of thing that I didn't like, with again like the teens, the look, but its plot is unique and the device with which it would like conduct the kills, like the whole death's plan, like death coming for you, sort of these like Rube Goldbergian setups of like how death will eventually catch you, was very unique and interesting and cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're both very big fans of the series in general. So and the first one is really good. So I guess I think maybe the way to tackle it, like we'll just talk about some things like what. So I think one of the first things, and probably the thing everybody wants to talk about when it comes to Final Destination, like what is your favorite kill? Like, what do you think is the best death in this movie?
So I think the best death in this movie, in my opinion, is probably Sean William Scott, and I say that even though it's not the goriest, it's not like the most elaborate, but I think his build up to it makes it so fun, and it's about to happen is the best part because he's talking shit, he's yelling, he's like, "You're fucking next, you're gonna die." This other guy like so confident, and you're like, "Oh, I see where this is going. He's about to fucking get it." And then he does. And it's a great sequence, even though the death isn't very elaborate. I think it's the most like fun scene in the movie. And this was Sean William Scott, like at his peak Sean William Scott attitude and like behavior. So the scene just works, and I think it's the high point of like the movie's like kills.
Okay, yeah, I think I can get on board with that. I definitely thought it was the one that was the best, what I would call like switcheroo.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you think this is going to end up being Carter. That's the character's name.
Yeah,
You think it's going to be Carter's death because he's like trapped in the car on the train tracks and everything, and then it turns out that he's not the one that gets it from that particular scenario. It's a much more shocking sort of death. For me, I think the best death is the first one that we see, and that is Todd's death. I think it might be the one that I think about the most out of all of the Final Destination like series, just because of how like incredible to me it seemed to be like one of the more plausible ones, and also like just absolutely fucking brutal. Where like the guy's getting ready to take a shower, and he slips in this water and like catches gets his like neck hung around this like steel like cable coming out of the like handheld shower thing.
Yeah.
And like it just so happens that he's also like kicked over the like conditioner or shampoo all over the floor, so he can't like get a footing and keeps slipping and sliding around. Like I just remember that going, oh my god, like this is just horrifying.
This one was weird to me because when I was rewatching this, I guess it's been a long time since I saw these movies for one thing.
Yeah.
So that death in particular had an interesting bit to it that I was like, did they ever do this again in the series? Because after he dies, we see the water that he slipped in that came out from under the toilet recede back under the toilet, like as if like some unseen force, like which we know did happen. We know like an unseen force of death came for him. But this particular thing is the only one where I think we see like death cover its tracks. And I was like, wow, did they do that ever again in the series?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure. And what's interesting about that too is it would suggest that death was trying to make it look like a suicide, and not an accident. Like they wanted it to purposefully look that way, which is kind of an interesting. I'd never really thought about it much until you just said that, because I do remember this last watch, like noticing the water retracting. I just didn't really think about it that much, and now you say it, I'm like, yeah, why was it doing that exactly?
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. I was like, did it like? What was the point of that? I was like, does it ever in any future movie that I don't remember go back and cover its tracks to make it look like something else happened? It was very strange. I was like,
we'll have to go and do like a revisit and tell everybody.
No criticism, just weird to me.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't think about that. That is interesting. There's a lot of really cool, I think Devon Sawa is really, really good, and I'm kind of sad we didn't get him in more stuff back then, because we had like this, and we
Idle
had
Hands.
Idle Hands.
I watched the shit out of Idle Hands as a
Yeah, I
teenager.
had too. Was that about all we really had from him in this era?
I feel like it was. Like, those are the two things I remember him being in. Maybe he was in the kind of movies I wasn't watching. Um, but in this time, he hadn't he hadn't kicked off yet and done, fucking anything to make him really famous, like Death Rider in the House of Vampires or anything yet.
Oh yes, of course.
But no, I guess he was Casper.
Oh yeah. Like, I knew he had done a couple of things like before this.
And
It was more
SLC
like
Punk, I guess, was the other thing I would have watched him as a kid.
It looks like he was doing like the voice of Flash Thompson in the Spider-Man animated series from around that time.
Yeah, looking at this time, like
yeah, I mean, he was doing
SLC
stuff.
Punk,
He was
Idle
working.
Hands, and Final Destination would be the three things I watched a lot.
Yeah, he was doing some TV. It looks like. So I guess he was just doing things that I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention of.
That's probably because like Slackers, I wasn't like watching. I don't remember. I might have watched this, but I don't remember it.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, he was working. He just wasn't. Yeah, I guess he just wasn't up at front.
Not as much horror, and we were definitely watching all the horror at this point.
True.
Mostly.
True. I would have thought that he would have, because I just feel like he was really good and really charismatic, and so I'm kind of surprised that he didn't end up being at the front of a lot more stuff.
I do think this series, though, in particular, kind of did become like his career for a bit. I felt like, right?
He just did wasn't he just in the first two?
Oh, was he only in the first one too?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah, interesting. Because didn't he come back for the newest one or something, or did he not come back for that one either? No, he didn't.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to. I think his character's dead. I think he dies in the second one.
Ah, interesting.
I think again, this is I haven't revisited this stuff in a long time, so I could be completely talking out of my butt.
He's in that new Return of the Living Dead movie. Interesting.
Looks like he did get to 2000.
It's the series I haven't seen in
Final
years.
Destination. So. Oh, maybe he wasn't even in Final Destination 2.
I thought it looks like he was not, which is weird. Because
I guess they write him. I think they write him dead, if I remember right. I think they say that he's dead in it or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he was. This is kind of what would have put him on the map for being in horror.
100%. Yeah,
as a horror star.
This was a big deal when it came out. I remember.
Yeah, and now he's a much bigger. Like now he's in like a lot of he was in Hard Eyes. He was in the Chucky Show. He's in Twisted Metal. Like he's like
Black Friday. Yeah, lots of stuff.
So yeah, he's definitely working a lot more. But Devon Sawa was really cool. Allie Larder was somebody that I remember her probably around shortly after this would be when I was watching Heroes, and she was in that show. And then I think wasn't she in the House on Haunted Hill remake too?
I remember her in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I remember watching her in that.
Yeah, she was on the House on Haunted Hill remake.
Yeah, she was.
Mm-hmm. So she was doing a lot of stuff around the same era too. It's interesting too because I feel like in the House on Haunted Hill was before this, or they probably shot them in the similar time span. But she's playing like a teenager in high school in this, just playing like an adult like reporter or something. I think in House on Haunted Hill. So that's
I think she's supposed to be like kind of like a young up and coming reporter in that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I liked her. I thought she was really good. And like you mentioned, Sean William Scott's interesting because I remember at this point in time he would have been a guy I would have rolled my eyes at because I would have thought of him as the dude from like American Pie, the like really dude bro like comedy, just completely like goofy and like the kind of guy who started being a frat, and then. Now I start to see him popping up in things where he plays like villains, and he's really good. Like I don't know if you've seen Becky 2, where he plays like the neo-Nazi.
And he was fun in Dolly recently.
Yeah, he was good in Dolly.
That's the thing I think of him in recently.
Yep.
But this was during the era when he was like getting that bag. He was like 100%. He was taking every role he could. It felt like to get paid while he was hot, and who can blame him?
Right. Sometimes you get kind of
he was in everything.
Yeah, you get typecast and you kind of do those kind of things. But yeah, that was cool. Also, I always like to see Daniel Roebuck show up. He's kind of an interesting figure because I watch a lot of YouTube stuff with like collectors that go to like old like horror conventions, but also just like collector conventions and people who collect old monster stuff like 60s and 50s, 60s, and further back like monster things. And Roebuck, I guess he's in that world. Like he likes to collect stuff like that too. And he's kind of become an icon, interestingly enough, because he was Grandpa Monster in the Rob Zombie's version of the Monsters.
Yeah.
which is a movie I don't hate. A lot of people hate that movie. I actually thought it was pretty fun, and I think he
Feels
was
like an
fun.
episode of the show that just doesn't. It feels like it's just like it could have been the pilot to a show.
Yeah, and I think that my guess when you're watching it, my guess is that's what it was. I bet Universal was trying to kick off a show, and they had him film it, and maybe they saw what they had and thought, this might not work out. Let's just release it as a movie and call it a day.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like they were trying to kick off a show. But what I think is interesting, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, as I know we're talking about Final Destination, but I've noticed a lot of people really hate this version of the monsters, and usually the reasons that I hear is people will be like, oh, it's like nothing like anything else Rob Zombie's done. It's not like House of a Thousand Corpses or anything. And I remember when this was like building up, there was all these jokes about how it was going to be like in a trailer park, and there were all the white trash stuff. So I thought the fact that it wasn't like that would have been something that people would have liked, because it would have shown that Zombie could do things that weren't like that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is people talk about how goofy it was. I'm like, guys, do you not remember the monsters? Like, it was really, really, really goofy.
It is a goofy ass series.
Yeah, so I'm like, I think this was really like a big love letter to this show from a guy who was obviously grew up a huge fan. I mean, was it perfect? No, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like anybody was expecting him to make this into like an R-rated, like trailer park style Rob Zombie movie obviously did not understand how much he clearly loves that show.
Right. Well, not only that, I don't think that would have worked. I
mean, that would have been terrible.
Yeah, like, I think that would have been terrible, and I think people sometimes think they want something they don't actually want. But regardless, we're getting on too far out in the woods there.
Yeah.
But no. So Daniel Roebuck's cool to see him show up as like one of the cops or the FBI agents, and then Tony Todd plays the Undertaker in this, and it's probably his most recognizable character outside of Candyman, I'd say.
It might be even more recognizable to younger generations, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. That's hard to say. Like, I do think a lot of people watch Final Destination would recognize that, but man, Candyman is one of those things. I think Candyman kind of exists in that same place as like Jason and Freddy, where even if you haven't seen Candyman, you know who Candyman is. But I think this is a very cool. Like, I think the Undertaker is an interesting character because it's not just Tony Todd doing like a Candyman remix. It almost feels to me like, I don't know if you got this vibe, but it almost feels like he's the Crypt Keeper in a way. Like, he's doing these like very like goofy punish like jokes, and he's very over the top, and like
definitely
he knows.
This first one.
Yeah, he knows, and I think it gets kind of worse in some of the other ones.
Yeah, I don't remember. So
yeah, but like I think it's a very cool. I like the meta feel that character has. Where like, is he deaf? Like, why does he know so much? All that. And for anybody who hasn't seen the newest, was it Bloodline? Is that what Final Destination Bloodline came out earlier this year? Yeah. Tony Todd's role, like his scene in that, is really, really sad, because you kind of get the idea that he knew that would be the last time anybody would see him on film, and he was saying goodbye. So that was really a heartfelt, sad moment for all of us who grew up with him.
He looks so thin in it too. Like, you can tell. Like,
he definitely did.
He's very, very gaunt, and like you can tell that this was when he was very sick. So it is sad to watch. But it also feels fit. It's a fitting send off for him in those scenes. It works. And it's good.
Yeah, I really liked it. I know that you weren't the biggest fan of that one, but like I had a lot of fun. I thought that some of the kills in it were really great. My only big complaint about that movie is a complaint that I have in general about a lot of movies these days. They show a lot of the best scenes of that movie in the trailer. Yeah, and I wish they hadn't done that. I think that would have made things a little bit better, but I still had a good time with it. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess that's pretty much. Is there anything else you can think of that you wanted to?
No, I was just gonna say, like, when I watched this movie this time, I didn't remember how much of a cast this had. Like, I guess in my mind, having not watched it in 20 years, probably at this point, I had forgot how many people were in it. I was really surprised. I remembered Tony Todd and Devon Sawa, and that was kind of like the movie in my mind. But going back, I was like, holy shit, this was like a stacked cast for 2001. Like, it would have this was a big deal. Like, I don't know what the budget on this was, but it must have been pretty high, I would think, with this kind of cast.
It had to have been. It was definitely one of those big, tent pole like kind of movies for that year. Like, what's weird about horror movies? They always have a lower budget than you'd think.
Yeah, they do.
But then they make a shit ton of money.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guarantee this made a bunch of money.
oh yeah. I mean, they was at this point. Then they did. I mean, what do we have? Like 7 or 8 of these now,
Something.
something like
There's
that.
a lot of them, so
Six or
it
seven.
definitely made money, and yeah, I was shocked by how good the cast was. Like I was like, wow,
Oh,
I did not remember it being this stacked, but it is really like just everyone in it is at the top of their game and doing just great throughout this. I felt like.
I think, and we should probably talk about some of the others. There are a couple other deaths that we hadn't touched on that I think are cool. I remember the other one, and like as the Rube Goldbergian thing, it's more intense in some of the deaths than it is in others. Like you have the first death, water comes out of the toilet, guy the line on the shower head like comes down, the shampoo tips over and makes the floor like slick. So when the kid so there's all these little elements, and then you have stuff like Sean William Scott's character's death, where like a car gets like blasted apart and a piece of metal is just sitting there and like flies out and decapitates him or whatever. And then you also have the very shocking death, Terry's death, which like I remember watching this movie and I don't think anybody could have said they saw that coming. Like when that happens, nobody was expecting it. You just have this character who's like getting ready to tell these people off and steps out in front of a bus. Like that happens really
Yeah.
fast, and you don't see you just have no idea that it's going to happen, and it was a huge shocking moment.
Yeah, you see the bus go by, and like he sees the bus go by in the reflection, so you know there's a bus coming at
Right.
some point. But like you never, it's absolutely out of nowhere when it finally happens, and you don't expect it. It is like holy shit! And there, it's a great scene.
What it kind of makes me think of is I'm not a huge fan of the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, but like I believe it's the first movie where Jennifer Love Hewitt like steps out into the road and just like like come at me, or I shouldn't say come at me, but she's like basically like what are you gonna do, or like she has this like big moment where she's like yelling to the killer who's she presumably is out there watching them somewhere. It kind of felt like they in a way like making fun of that moment where somebody's just losing their shit, and then but then it's like instead of stepping out into the road and yelling, just boom, like gone in a heartbeat, with splattering everybody with blood.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's really really awesome. But I think that if you're gonna pick one, and it becomes like elaborate, the most elaborate one in the whole movie has to be the teacher's death scene.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's so many little elements, like accidentally spilling some water into the computer, which then like fries and the screen explodes, and she gets like a shard of glass in her, and she falls over and drags the thing down from off the stove. It's got a knife in it. It's just like all these little spinning gears, like all these little like things keep happening. Or other cup got like that's what it was. Her cup like cracked when she put hot drink in it. That's what leaked out into the computer. So there's all these little steps in this Rube Goldbergian like machine to cause that. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. And I think if you one of the things that's interesting, it's not a slasher movie, but it feels like a slasher movie. It feels like a slasher movie in the way that slasher movies used to be these like set pieces of kills. Like you would watch a movie and it would be this character gets killed by a machete coming through the wall, and this character gets killed by upturned lawnmower. It was kind of like that, but those scenes are a lot more elaborate because you can do the whole death has power over anything it needs to, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, you kind of have like the concept of death as the slasher here. Like the concept of death is your slasher killer here, which is it's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. I think the first one's probably like technically the best movie in terms of plot and getting the idea of what's going on out of the way. But I actually think the sequels up the ante in terms of like the kills and kind of like what's happening in that respect. I think the inciting incident from the sequel that starts the whole pattern of deaths is more interesting than the one in the first movie. Especially because it probably has the thing that everybody thinks of when you say Final Destination, which is the truck with the trees in the back of it. Like I think everybody sees one of those trucks on the road these days and is like, "Oh shit!" The Final Destination's getting ready.
Get off behind this thing immediately.
Right.
That's like immediately. Like nope, not riding behind this truck. Yeah, this was kind of like a Saw situation, though, right? Where like everyone, just like Saw, had to up the ante and get more and more elaborate and more gory or complicated or cool for each movie afterwards. Like
And that's
it's kind of the
probably and that's kind of
progression
the,
of
like
every
the
slasher.
yeah, I was gonna say that's like the template for most. If you go back and you're even like Friday the 13th or something like that, it just feels like, especially all the way up until about part 6, it felt like every movie they were trying to come up with like gorier deaths and more elaborate things and more.
Yeah, 100%. It starts out with, a guy gets an arrow through the bed in part
Mhm.
1, and then all of a sudden by part 9, you've got Jason shoving a tent spike through a lady's chest and then ripping her in half up through her, and like,
Right.
it's like it just escalates and escalates and gets more and more gory. It's like, yeah,
Yeah. You got
what
to
we
have a
do?
reason to get people in the theater for that next
Yeah,
installment because the story's going to get thin. There's only going to be so much you can do with these things. But yeah, so if you like slasher movies, if you like I guess I can say one thing I can definitely say about Final Destination. It is a firmly year 2000 film. It feels
yes,
very much of its era. One of the things I kind of like about the look is it's very nostalgic for me because I feel like it still kind of looks more late 90s. There's the scene where Devon Sawa's character Alex goes to talk to Clear, who's Ali Larter's character, at her house, and she's like a sculptor, like she does like metal sculptures, and she does it kind of out of her garage, and her garage is kind of set up as this studio. And I remember like they're standing there talking at one point, and like behind her is this like kind of sort of stained glass, like little like blocked window that she's made, and like plants and things, and the whole arrangement. I was just like, God, that is so like 1998, like being at somebody's house or watching a TV show and just seeing this like set up in the back. And just make it like I feel like this one and like The Craft is another movie I feel like is just so firmly a product of its time that when you watch it, you're like, yeah, this is a time capsule to a very specific moment
yeah.
that is gone now. But if you like that stuff, if you like Devon Sawa, if you like Tony Todd, really this is a good one. And this is also one I think is like both brutal and scary as well as fun and like silly. So you can have a good time with your friends, like watching something like this. So yeah, I think we both love it. Our stamp of approval. And if you guys like this and you want to hear us talk about the rest of the series, we can go through and do like a rundown of like all the movies and all the deaths and like kind of rank them or something. We can do that. Just let us know. But moving on from that, we're going to we said so originally tonight we were going to talk about a book, Nick Cutter's The True, which we will talk about next week instead. So what we thought we would do this time is we have a kind of a reoccurring segment here on the show called Return to the Critical Crypt, where we go back to movies that were panned when they were released, and we kind of see like if our thoughts have evolved, if we think the movie is still bad. Just kind of how that movie plays now compared to when we first saw it. And both of us, I think, saw this movie in the theater when it came out. I'm pretty sure.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Hang on just a moment. I'm sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. I think we both saw this movie when it came out, and we were both big fans of the series that it spawned from. So we came to it with a lot of baggage anyway. But what we're going to talk about tonight is A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. So this was the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. This one was directed by Samuel Bayer, who at the time was mostly known for doing music videos. Actually, kind of looks like now he's mostly known for doing music videos. Written by Wesley Strick and Eric Heiserer. And Eric Heiserer, I think, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right or not. He did a lot of stuff from that kind of like coming out of this era. Like he did Lights Out. He did Bird Box. He did The Thing from 2011. He did Final Destination 5. Oh, sorry. I have one of those like weird, like dry spots in the back of my throat. I can't seem to shake. It'll get better. This one is starring Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy, Rooney Mara, Kyle Gallner, Katie Cassidy, Thomas Dekker, Clancy Brown, and Connie Britton. The plot should be familiar to everybody, but just in case it's not, teens in a small town begin to have horrifying nightmares of a burned man with a metal claw hand who appears to be trying to get them to remember an incident from their past while also killing them if they fall asleep. So, Jeremy, back in 2010 when you saw Nightmare on Elm Street, what did you think of him?
I thought it was just horrifically bad.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted to see it again when I saw it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a disgrace to the series and just like a horrifyingly bad step down from the movies that came before it.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember anything back from that then specifically that really like stood out to you as like especially bad that like bothered you?
So some stuff still stands out the same stuff. I thought that there was, so when you watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Freddy is obviously a child murderer, and there's
Yeah.
always that thing that going in, and when you're dealing with something like that, there's always stuff that you have to wonder if is there also. But in
Right.
this movie, they kind of explicitly come out and turn Freddy into just a creepy pedophile, like
Well, let's
throughout the whole movie.
before we get too far, for anybody, let's just we're gonna put this out there as a warning. If you're sensitive at all with talk of things like
Child abuse or
yeah, child
anything like
abuse
that.
or anything like that, you might want to turn back now. Like we're not going to get real in depth with any of this. We wouldn't want to anyway. The movie doesn't either, but we are going to be talking about it. So if that's a thing that might bother you, you might want to skip probably the next like 20, maybe the rest of the episode, just because it's going to be hard to talk about this movie specifically without bringing this up.
Yeah.
So that's your warning. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so in this one, they really explicitly like lean into it, and like very clearly are like he is a pedophile,
Right.
and they even make puns about it, puns that are bad or jokes, I guess, about it. Like his one liners revolve around it. Like he's like, "How's this for a wet dream?" and stuff. That's
Right.
just like really, really bad and lame. And you're like, man, I don't like. You can't pull for a slasher who's a pedophile, also like who's walking around making like jokes about molesting children. Like you can't pull for this guy in this case, and you can't you can't be like, oh man, it was really cool when the child molester like murdered his former victim. I don't know who greenlit this and thought this was a good idea to do. And then on top of that, there was stuff that I hated then that I still hate. I think the makeup looks bad comparatively. I think that the CGI makeup on his face looks bad. Like it doesn't work. Like, when you see Robert Englund in the makeup, and then you see the scenes flashbacks to Robert Englund when he was Freddy alive, you're like, that's the same guy 100%. In this case, it seems like the makeup is so like overbearing and like in the CGI over top of it and everything, and you're like, okay, is that the same guy even when you see the flashbacks of him when he's alive versus with the makeup on, and it looks bad, it doesn't line up, and I just think there's a lot that I hate about this movie that I hated then and I still hate.
Sure.
So
I think when I first went to the theater to see this, there's a lot of context that's important to draw up, and that's that I grew up with this series. I grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's arguable that the first Nightmare on Elm Street film is the scariest and maybe the most. I'm gonna kind of put this in air quotes serious because there's a lot of things that are not serious in that movie, but I think that one portrayed Freddy as like this brutal killer. It was very sinister and scary and like appears as more of like a nightmare than a comedy element, although there are some comedy elements there are less in that first movie. But as the series went, Freddy developed into this very over the top campy funny character that just continuously got more and more ridiculous as the films went, until you're watching something like Freddy's Dead where he's using things like Nintendo to kill people and making like jokes and like things like this is your brain on drugs like jokes, and I'll just all manner of pop culture references, and he would do silly things like be on the beach with sunglasses on and doing like Jaws rip off. There's just a lot of stuff.
and if you're watching this and you weren't alive at that time,
Yeah.
like Freddy was hosting Spring Break on MTV and shit, like literally.
Right.
Like, he was everywhere.
Huge.
This was
He
like
was huge.
he was not a scary person by this point. It was everywhere. Freddy was the most famous person on earth almost,
Right. And it was very silly and very funny. And I think Robert Englund put a very firm stamp on the character. And so we just had this very strong idea of what all this was going to be going into a remake. So it's always, this is the kind of remake I would never want to be at the helm of, because it would be hard no matter what. Like you were going to be fighting an uphill battle. So when I sat down to watch this, I think much like you, the biggest thing that stood out to me was that they pretty much took all of the humor out of it entirely. Like there's almost no humor. And they did weave in this element because one of the Freddy's a very interesting character. And I think we kind of have to talk about this before we get too deep into the he is a character that we had started to watch, back in, was it 82 that they did the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I think.
Sounds right, yeah.
So the very first movie comes out. This guy is a child killer. Like he's murdering children, like small children, and lots of them, to the point where the parents get together and kill him. So he's always been this despicable character, when you really think about it. And like you said, I think there's been subtext for a long time that you could read into because he's obviously a pervert. Even in the old movies, like the Freddy character is a pervert. In the first movie, he does stuff like sticking his tongue through the phone and telling Nancy he's her boyfriend now and stuff like that. All of that stuff was always there, but I think that they took a very light hand in how they talked about all of it. Like they kind of casually mentioned at one point that Freddy was a child killer and that's why we went after him, so he didn't go to prison.
Yeah, it was in the background.
Yeah, they don't really talk about it a whole lot. And I think they talked about it even less almost as the series went on until maybe Freddy's Dead, where they kind of go back and
they go back to the elementary school and stuff in that one. Yeah.
But before that, they kind of just ignore it, and you kind of get this Freddy who's just a fun, campy, quipping, silly, like killer that you start to root for in a way. Like, I mean, not like you really, but you enjoy him being on screen because he's fun.
Yeah.
So you don't really think about it. And I mean, I've had to start to think about that over the years about how really that's kind of fucked up. That over the years we were just like really rooting for this like child killer. Very weird.
It's weird,
People get tattoos of him. They have posters of him. It's weird when you really start to drill down into it. But we all know why, and it's the charisma of the character and Robert Englund and all that. And they kind of backseat that part of the character, so you don't think about it a whole lot. Well, in comes the Nightmare on Elm Street 2010, and they really put that aspect front and center. It's a huge plot point in the movie that Freddy Krueger is a child abuser. Like. Actually, I don't even think they go so far as to say he's a killer in this.
They don't. He never kills a single kid. He's just
and so that element, it immediately changes the tone of everything. And what's really, really weird, this is again, I think we've talked about stuff like this. There seems to be a prevailing thought among a lot of people, myself included, that talking about murder is really bad, but for some reason talking about like child abuse seems so much worse somehow. And I think when you as soon as you bring that topic up, the whole vibe changes and it becomes this very grim, very uncomfortable, very awkward thing that you don't really want to deal with. And like you said, as soon as that element is introduced, everything that Freddy does takes on that context. So when he says something like gross or perverted, it's suddenly way worse than it would have been if he was just talking to like some teenagers or something. It just feels a lot grosser.
Yeah.
And like you said, it changes the context. So that I think is probably number one, the biggest stumbling block with A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I know why they did it, because this was 2010. The 2000s were an era of a lot more edgy stuff in movies. We had like the Saw series, we had the French Extreme stuff coming out. There were a lot of much more edgy things. We've kind of backed away from a lot of that in modern time. So I can see on the face of it some people getting together and saying, okay, we're going to remake A Nightmare on Elm Street. We don't have Robert Englund. We need to do this story for a new audience. What do we do to make this scary? What do we do to make this horror again? And I think that some people came up with this would be a horrible element. And it's true, it is. It does change the tone of everything by a whole lot. But I think it takes it in the wrong direction. It takes it to a place that doesn't. You're not going to get 10 movies out of something like this. This is one, you watch one and you're like, I feel kind of gross.
Because once you've done this, you literally can't make him funny after this to people. Because an audience is never going to be like, haha, funny child molester.
Right. Also, some spoilers. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about a movie, you should just assume there's going to be some spoilers. But we're definitely going to spoil some shit in this. There's a twist in this movie, kind of, that I think what I don't think was the right choice.
Are you talking about the
And
fact that they were apparently Guardian Force users?
no,
That's a Final Fantasy VIII joke.
when the movie first starts to play, and then the teenagers don't remember being kids together or whatever.
Yeah.
What the premise they settle on is that Freddy has come back because the parents have murdered him because the kids lied about him being a child molester. So the kids told this lie, and then he got killed, and so now he wants revenge on these people.
Yes.
And then later, the twist is that they did not lie. Like the twist is they find this hidden room, they find pictures that he had abused kids, so he was, a child molester. And I think that was probably a mistake because when I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, okay, well, what would be interesting is in the original series, Freddy was a child killer who got away with it, and the parents burned him for it. But what if, in the new version, the kids lied about, for whatever reason, lied about the things he did because maybe they were trying to get out of trouble for something, or maybe they didn't want to go to school, or whatever. They lie about it, and this man is killed for something he didn't do. So he comes back as this demon to get revenge. I'm like, well, that's an interesting take. That's a different take on the character, and that would be because that's the thing I'm always saying about remakes. Take something that was done before and do something new with it, like a new idea, a new take. And I think that take would actually be interesting. I think that would have been something you could have run with. But yeah, taking it back into the child molested, that just changes the tone in a way that's irredeemable. It's going to be this way now going forward, and it's too uncomfortable, I think, for the type of series that it is.
Yeah. The thing that the Final Fantasy VIII deck I was making when I said they were Guardian Force users, that game has a point where they're like, you eventually, Final Fantasy VIII, spoiler from it, hasn't played a game 30 years ago, that you eventually find out all your characters were in the same orphanage when they were kids. They don't remember it, but the magic they use makes them forget their childhoods. And I was like, so this one has this plot point where halfway through you learn that all these people were in kindergarten together and none of them remember it. And the entire explanation is basically, well, we hid the pictures of your kindergarten from you.
Sure.
So you don't remember your kindergarten and all. And I was like, that's not how that works. What the
fuck?
fuck?
I think you could probably, while I agree, it's kind of a little bit of a lazy writing trick. I think you can probably justify that with some PTSD stuff, like they suppress these memories, because that was, especially, I think we've kind of come around on suppressed memories not being quite the thing that it once was considered in psychology. But for a long time, we ran with that being a big thing, and this was 2010, so it was 16 years ago. Yeah. So it's very possible that that felt like a valid. I mean, I bought it. I buy it fine. It's I don't think about it too deep. I'm like, okay.
It was very funny. Okay. I was like, what? They just hid the pictures so their kids forgot all their friends from kindergarten. That's weird. I'm like,
it is definitely a bit of a case that probably was some lazy writing.
I was like, I feel like you could have done this in a whole bunch of different ways. Also, I was reading more about this movie, and in an interview, they said they were going to digitally alter Jackie Earle Haley's voice, so that he didn't just sound like Rorschach. And I was like, I think they failed.
Well,
so it just sounds like Rorschach, right?
I feel like I recently watched a video a few weeks ago with Thomas Dekker doing an interview. I wish I could remember that YouTube channel. I'll try to remember and we'll link it if I can. Where Thomas Dekker's talking to a guy about the making of the movie. And he talks about that there was an original performance that Jackie Earle Haley gave that they shot the whole movie with. And then I think it was something that everybody felt was genuinely unnerving and creepy. And then at the end, they went back and made him dub over all of it with his normal, kind of his normal Jackie Earle Haley, the voice that's in it now. Yeah, the voice that's in it now. And so I didn't really think that was good or bad. It was just there. I'm kind of interested. I would be more interested to see what the original take was.
Yeah, same.
I don't know that it would have been something I would have liked or not, because I feel like I remember it being some kind of weird accent or something they were talking about. When reading it, but I don't know.
That's not going to save this movie, in my opinion.
No, it wouldn't have saved it. I would have been interested to see it. Well, I think now we kind of dissected what we thought about back then and kind of some of the reasons we can get into. I'll kick it off. So I think my take on this is a little bit different than Jeremy's. It's not. I will not say that I think that this movie is unfairly disliked, because I do think that there's a lot of reasons. I completely understand why people don't like it. I can say that I do think this is better than I remember it being. I remember being like almost angry. And I think it was because I came to this movie with just such a strong love of the movies before it, that I was tearing apart anything that didn't feel um, familiar to me, or like, or, that sort of thing. I was really, really harsh on it. Now, while I can say that, like I said, at first I'm going to start with things I think are good. I think that Jackie Earle Haley does a good job in the movie, doing something that's his and is not Robert Englund. I do appreciate that, because there's no way anybody was going to come into this movie like aping Robert Englund and hammering it. It just wasn't going to work. I think that instead he took a creepy, like, and I mean creepy in both the scary and the, like, questionable ways. He brought something to this role that takes courage, because if somebody told me, hey man, you're getting ready to play this iconic character, and not only are you going to play this character, he's going to be a child molester and you've got to roll with it, I think it would be hard to do. So I commend his ability to lean into it. So I think he's good. I kind of liked some of because that's one of the things when I was watching this, I am reminded, is I've recently did a rewatch on all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies from the past. And I do love them. They're movies I grew up with, but they are very silly, and they continuously get more and more silly. I very rarely ever find Freddy scary. I think he's scary for like a moment or two in the first movie, and then I think he's most scary in the second movie. After that, not really scary at all. And Jackie Earle Haley does come off as menacing and scary and creepy in a way that I hadn't seen Freddy in a long time. So I do think that's a good element. I think Kyle Gallner, it was cool seeing him pop up here. I think he's a really good actor now. He's like one of my favorite actors. When he pops up in something, I'm excited to see it. I don't know. I think here he was very young, and he was fine. Like, he was turning in an okay performance, but it wasn't really anything special. But I do think it was cool seeing him. Oddly, I thought the actress who played Chris, who I think is Katie Cassidy, I think she was in that Arrow show, I think she's probably the best actress in the movie, and it's weird they chose to make her Chris and kill her off instead of having her be like the Nancy type character. Because the girl they have playing Nancy, I thought was very like Rooney Mara. She didn't do a lot in this movie. That I don't know. I didn't think her Nancy was very compelling.
I agree with that. I don't think that the lead, not that she's a bad actress. I think Rooney Mara is a really good actress
Yeah,
overall in a lot of things. I mean, I think she was great in like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
right.
Um, I think she was recently in Nightmare Alley, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
A few other things. So she's a good actress. She didn't work in this, I don't think, for me
No,
as the
no.
lead.
I remember being
Yeah,
confused watching this time, as I'd forgotten that Katie Cassidy was playing like not the main character.
yeah, yeah,
Because they
same.
kind of pull a switcheroo on you with that again. Like, you in the original movie, you knew Nancy's the main character and Tina's her friend, and Tina gets killed. But this time, you're kind of following Tina at first and don't realize, she's not going to be the
Yeah.
main character. I feel like maybe they should have stuck with Katie Cassidy. I think I don't know, something about her was more compelling. The way they wrote her character, I don't know. It was just that was a weird choice, but she's good. So Katie Cassidy's good in it.
I think
Thomas
Jackie
Decker's
Earle
good.
Haley is working with what he's got. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
he's working with the script he's got, so I don't think it's his fault this movie's bad. I don't really think it's anybody in this cast's fault that the movie's bad, in my opinion,
No, no,
honestly.
no, 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 no. It's not.
Here's like
Nothing's bad. Nothing's poorly acted.
they're doing fine. I mean, there's scenes in
Um,
it that I think are bad.
yeah,
I think Freddie doing the Batman wake up voice yelling at her is like bad. I think that scene's bad, but I don't think it's Jackie Earle Haley's fault that some of these scenes are bad. I think he's working with what he's got, and he does a fine job.
yeah. I think there are some scenes in this that I actually like a little better than the scenes in the original movie. One of them being the blood hallway, because in the original movie, it's like stepping in like sticky stuff in the floor, which is like, you know, like it's okay, I guess. It's like fine. But like you're literally running into a hallway that turns into blood that you like, are like trying to swim in. That was actually really cool visual. I think it looked really cool. It looked cooler than I don't know if that was in the first movie or the or later a sequel, but whenever somebody was running and they were getting like caught on like sticky stairs or something, it's kind of what it made me think of. But it's just like the whole hallway turns into blood. That was really, really cool. Yes, I mean, and I think that they do some really cool lighting choices. Like, there's a lot of this green, red lighting in the dream sequences that make you think of Freddy's like sweater, which I think is cool. I think that was a cool like touch. But I think that's kind of where it stops for me. And again, like I said, I think this one is more shadowy and menacing and dark. But a lot of times it feels like they're also trying to do like the greatest hits of Freddy and doing them less well than they were done originally.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
the bed scene, especially like Johnny Depp's
Yeah.
like dying in bed scene.
Yeah, because they didn't even do a death scene with that. They had a girl like coming out of the dream,
Yeah,
or
over
still
top
in
of
a
the bed.
dream, like
And
over the bed. Yeah,
and it's not nearly as cool as the original.
no, it's not. It's not. And I think both Rod's, or in this, I guess his character is it? I don't know what the boyfriend Thomas Decker's character's name is in this. He's like
Jesse.
Jesse. That's it. Jesse's death in this is not as it's just Freddy stabbing him, whereas in the original you had Rod getting killed with the like Freddy claw led like noose in the prison cell. Like that's the thing this one does. They mostly have Freddy show up in dreams and stab people, which I mean, okay, he's got a knife hand. I understand that's something you want to do. But in the original, you had these scenes like you had other stuff he would do, like other kills and other things that were more like iconic and interesting. Like,
I mean, he's a dream demon with like power. Like he's got all
right,
this power to like manipulate your dreams. He can do whatever he wants. And this movie very often falls back to he has a claw hand, and it's like, well, but like he's better than that. He should be.
right. Yeah, I think that was something that kind of because when they kill, I guess Chris is or not Tina. Like I always want to say Tina, but they call her character Chris in this. When they kill Chris, it's reminiscent of the Tina death scene, but like I guess they did something that would have been harder to do back then with like throwing her around the room, like
for sure.
slamming into walls, but it just wasn't as effective as what they did in the original. Which I mean, honestly, that's tough because I think Tina's death may be, if it's not the greatest death scene ever filmed, it's certainly in the top 5. Like it's
way up there, and it's a really cool scene. And if you watch how they did it, it's really cool. Where this one does just kind of, I think, fall back on a lot of
CGI and probably some little wire stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that, and then like you mentioned the blood fountain thing, where Glenn dies in the original movie is like blood exploding up out of the bed after he sinks into it. This is like just sort of like imagine you're watching CGI water effects of blood on a ceiling. Yeah. It's just okay. It's fine. I think in the original movie you have Freddy. So when eventually the kids figure out what's going on, and then they decide they're going to stop Freddy. In the original, you have Nancy putting this plan together where she's like, okay, well, I can pull Freddy out of the dream, and then we can set up this like elaborate, thing to kill him, which is a little campy in the fact they set their house up like Home Alone, which is important to note. Home Alone was not a glimmer in anybody's eye yet. But still, it's a very Home Alone-esque sequence of them building traps and things in the house so when they pull Freddy in, they can get him. At least they feel like they're giving the kids more agency and they were fighting back. And this, it's more like they kind of accidentally figure out they can pull Freddy out and then just sort of have him out and just sort of fight him. And mostly fail at fighting him until, Nancy grabs a knife and starts fucking him up a little bit. It just feels a little like less. It feels less earned, less interesting. Like I don't know. Like it was more of a letdown. I definitely feel like the last act of this movie is where it really unravels. Like just We find out about the definite child sexual abuse, which is rough. I feel like there's the characters don't have any good chemistry with each other, and like you have like the Rooney Mara character Nancy that's kind of boring and flat. Kyle Gallner's character is just kind of there. I mean, he's fine. I guess his big thing is he's doing drugs to like stay awake, which is fine. Whatever. Yeah, that the end, like I said, it just doesn't come together very well. And then after they defeat him by pulling him out of the dream and killing him, we're once again treated to the ending that Wes Craven didn't want in the original movie, which was like, we gotta have him pop back up and take out the mom. We can't be dead. We're treated to that exact same thing done just through a mirror instead of a door.
And it looks bad this time too.
Yeah, and it's very CG heavy. Because they wanted it to be a little more gory than I think, and I think they just it doesn't.
That's one that it looks bad in the original. It looks bad here. It's just bad a different way now. Right. I don't know why they did it. It doesn't work here either. Just like it doesn't work in the original, honestly.
Yeah, it's I really wanted, because when this started back up, when I was watching it the second time, I was like, there's a lot about this. It's not as bad as I remember. Like, I think the scenes look pretty good and the acting's pretty good, and I kind of like this, like the opening setup of some kids meeting in a diner, talking about stuff that's going on, and they're all kind of like just there tangentially at the same time, and there's like you can tell there's some things going on between all of them. I kind of like that as an opening setup. I kind of like I forget the name of the kid, but the kid who the first death in the movie. I thought that was interesting. Like, it was interesting that she had to watch this guy do this to himself, like right there, in the middle of this diner. Like, I was like, okay, maybe this is going to be a lot better than I thought it was. And again, it is better than I thought it was, but it just suffers from like a major plot element that I think forces this movie to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything that I missed there that you felt like you needed to?
There's stuff that stands out to me as just being bizarre, and like I don't know why they did it in the movie. Also, like beyond the thing, like when the parents are telling them the story of how they found out that they were being molested, and there's a scene that I literally like laughed out loud at almost, despite the fact that it shouldn't be funny. Because the mom's like, and then we started to notice things, she says. And as she says this, the scene it's showing is this mom lifting up her daughter's shirt in the back, and there are like 5 giant like claw marks that are like almost completely healed on her daughter's back. And I'm like, how the fuck did you not notice that sooner?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, you didn't realize that your 8-year-old was being like viciously cut? You didn't realize that your 8-year-old, like, there's a scene later where it's like, where she's remembering back, and like Freddy's like throwing red paint all over the place, and she's got red paint all over her dress. Like, you didn't realize your daughter coming home with like red paint all over her and shit, and like telling you these things. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, the story like doesn't seem to follow and flow or make any kind of sense almost in how they try to justify this, like a lot of the actions. It's like, what? Like, how did this happen? Like, how did we get here? Because it doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. I feel like it's just.
I would say though, like, well, I agree with what you're saying. I think they're good points. I do think a lot of times, so think about all these stories you've ever heard like this, where it's like some stuff like this is going on, and people are like, we should have seen the signs and we didn't. I think that's what they were going for. But yeah, they probably the way they illustrated it was a little weird.
The funniest one to me, like I said, was the giant claw marks on her back.
Right.
I'm like, that are like healed at this point. I'm like, this was the first time you noticed? You didn't notice when your daughter came home with like giant, like need stitches, like cuts across her entire back? Like, what is going on? It just, and like no one's ever like talked. And then like, I don't know, there's a lot that's weird. That like the kids are like, we think he was innocent. This guy that's like been like saying weird shit to us and like murdering our friends. Like, I don't know. It just, a lot of it doesn't follow to me.
Yeah, that was a problem that I had, is that I didn't really understand why they thought he was innocent. Like, I think that would have been a more interesting take, but I probably just would have cut the child abuse and just made him innocent.
Same.
And this, it's like you just all forgot about it because of PTSD, and now you're like, oh, well, maybe the whole reason he's doing this is the parents killed him and it was unfair because maybe we lied about it. Yeah, you're right. It didn't completely work. And again, it leads to this very uncomfortable feeling that I think doesn't exactly work for this kind of movie.
There was one really funny scene in the movie that not isn't a bad scene even, that cracked me up, and that's when he Quentin, is that the guy's name? Quentin.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kyle Garner's
When
character.
when he stops to try to get a refill on his medication at this pharmacy, and he goes and he's like, I need to refill this. And the guy's like, you're out of refills. And he's like talking to the pharmacist, and he's like, come on, man. Like, I don't have time for a call. And the pharmacist is like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. He's just like, come on, bro, just fill it up. And I'm like, has that ever worked on a pharmacist for anybody? Because like, I'm gonna start saying that to the pharmacist, like when they're like, "You're out of refills," and I'm like, "Just fill it up, man. Come on,
Yeah, just fill it. Just help a brother out.
just fill it up. Just fill it up." It was just a funny scene. That scene actually cracked me up. I was like, "That's funny." That he said it even. So
Right.
I don't like the movie, but it has moments that did make me laugh at least, and like
Mhm.
moments that I did enjoy. So I guess I don't hate it as much as I did 20 years ago, but I
Yeah.
still don't think it's worth your time. If you, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody.
It's kind of tough because, like, I guess what I would say ultimately about this movie is that if you are a person who maybe you're younger and you'd heard about the Nightmare on Elm Street series and you revisit it and you thought it was too silly, like, because I have heard that. I've actually, there's a guy I've talked about this on a few of my other episodes that had never seen like any movie, and so I've been showing him a lot of movies. And when we got to the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff, he was like, I like some of the ideas here, but I think these movies are just too silly. And they just continuously get more and more silly, and it gets like he's not scary and all that.
And they are silly. That's true.
And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. Like, I think I grew up in a day, I was a kid when all this was coming out, so it was easier for me to swallow. But I don't know how I would feel about all of them as an adult coming back to it, if I didn't have any nostalgia for them. So maybe if you're a person who saw the original series, didn't think it was very good, maybe you wanted a more serious, like, dark take on it, then this might be the answer for you. I know there are people that like this movie. I mean, I know there are people out there that champion it and say it's not as bad as, and I will come out and say it's not as bad as I remember, and I don't know that it deserves quite the level of hate that it gets, but I do think that it sort of set up a problematic thing in its own premise that would have made it hard for this to be like a continuing like remake series.
Yes.
So yeah, I understand why it kind of stopped where it did, and again, it's such a weird. It's hard to be. We can't really be like, man, Jackie Earle Haley like ruined this movie. That's not true.
It didn't.
Like,
no.
we can't be like, oh, the special effects were just terrible. Because I mean, they're not. There are some that are better than others. CGI is weird and doesn't always age well.
You should
Just
never,
like some.
if you're ever making a movie, just like, and you're not James Cameron, and you don't have James Cameron money, don't ever make your main character, one of your main character's faces require CGI
Yeah.
on there to like look right, because it's not going to turn out well for you if you don't have James Cameron money. Like, that's
I
just a
do
fact.
understand what they were going for, because I think that whenever you look at Freddy, Freddy's makeup is cool. It's not convincing as burn makeup. Like, it
No,
doesn't
it's not
look like a
convincing.
person. It doesn't
But
look like a person who's burned.
nobody ever cared though.
Sure, nobody cared. But I think I understand. If you're okay, we're doing a remake, we need to do something different. Why don't we make him look like he's actually burned? Like, make him look like he actually has burn scars. But I'm with you. I would not have done it with so much CGI. I think they could have done that with a lot more. Which I do think there are practical effects makeup in it and scenes with it.
There is,
and I wish they would.
It's a combination of the two.
Yeah, I wish they would have stuck with that, because I think that would have played longer and better than the.
Yeah, like for some reason they wanted a hole in his cheeks. They did CGI to like make a hole in his cheek.
I get that.
Like,
I get what they're doing, but it doesn't. It just did. Like, we are now to a point where we can do that a little better
if you have money.
If you have money, you're right. If you have money, which I'm sure the budget of this was good, but not
great, because horror movies never get that kind of money.
Right.
It just doesn't.
So this one's kind of tough, because I think I was hoping I would come back to this movie and I would just be like, oh, there was really, I was just being silly, because I feel like that's what happened to me with the Friday the 13th remake, was that I saw it when it came out and I didn't immediately love it.
Same.
Like, I was unfairly harsh, because I was carrying all these expectations from the years that I grew up watching these movies and expecting them to grow up with me. And I think the Friday the 13th remake is just literally somebody's crack at, what if we just made a Friday the 13th movie now? Exactly like we used to, where it's, teens doing stupid teen shit, getting killed, like having sex and doing drugs. That's what they gave us. And it's actually one of the better Friday the 13th movies to me now. But back then, yeah, I had all this, baggage I was carrying around from the series. And so I thought that was going to happen with this. I think there is some, but I don't think that's ultimately what's going on. I think ultimately it's the heaviness of the subject matter really drags this movie down.
No, I think I tried to set aside my expectations of of previous entries and
Right.
said let's watch this as a separate thing
Sure.
and nothing to do with the originals and see how this turns out.
Mhm.
Which is what I did with Friday the 13th, and I love that movie now. I think that's one of the best remakes from this
Right.
era,
Mhm.
actually. Where I still think this is bad. It didn't land.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird because like I think if you look at this movie purely from like a film standpoint, like you're not like critiquing the Friday the Third, I mean the Nightmare on Elm Street elements or any of that stuff. Um, I mean it works as a movie, right? Like it's got like
Kind of. There's weird plot holes that I guess if you were looking at it
yeah,
like from that it would be picked apart by like true critics who are looking at it from a true film standpoint or
sure.
whatever true film means.
But you know the like the cinematography's fine, the acting's
Yeah, yeah.
fine, the writing's fine, like all that stuff. It's all there. So technically it's a fine movie on paper. If you were watching this as an isolated spooky movie about a child molester like who kills people in their dreams, it works. It's there. You know, it's a movie that would have come out and we would have watched and then probably been like, okay, that was all right, and probably never watch it again. You know, that sort of thing. But because it also had to exist in the shadow of all this other stuff, which was always going to be a thing. You have to consider that, you know,
You
when
have
you're
to. You
making these
literally
movies.
cannot remake a movie without knowing that's going to happen.
Then you know it doesn't live up to the potential. So at least that's where this is one. I think this might be the first time since we've done this that I've come back to one of these and been like, yeah, I think this is still a movie that is not going to enter my repertoire of movies I'll rewatch. This might be the last time I watch this one.
I'm not buying this for my collection, I'll tell you that. I'm not picking up a copy of this on 4K ever. Like, that's just not
No,
going to happen.
I can't really see like wanting to gather all the homies to sit around and watch
No.
the child molester dream killer movie.
Nope.
So yeah, and it's funny. It's still the same. And again, it's still most of the same problems I had to begin with. That I with Halloween, like with the Rob Zombie's Halloween, I was, and I still do. Obviously, like the John Carpenter version more. But I remember what bothered me so much about the Rob Zombie's Halloween when I first saw it was the change where we know what's going on with Michael Myers, where it's not like a question of like what caused him to be a murderer. He's this abused kid who kind of textbook serial killer stuff becomes a serial killer.
Yeah, he's not the boogeyman in that one.
He's not
He's
the
just
boogeyman, yeah. And I've softened on that over the years. Like of course, I still love the original Halloween more, but I think what Rob Zombie did too was also interesting, and I think it was a bold choice to try to do something different, and I think it succeeds. It's just whether what one you like more, right? But this is one where I think the choice they made, while it was different, does not succeed. I think it drags the movie down in a way that probably killed a potential franchise.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you've never seen this and you're curious about it, I do think this movie might work well for people who are younger who prefer like the films of like the 2010s forward. If you like the style more and you like the special effects of that like CGI type stuff more, and you can get over it, or you just really like really dark premises because the premises of this is very dark. This might be for you. I do think if you're an old school guy like us and you're a big fan of the original series, it's probably going to be the one that you like the least.
Yeah, I think I would say so.
All right. So that caps off our thoughts there. And now we're going to move on to kind of our final segment where we do recommendations. And we thought that this week we would do movies released in the 2000s as kind of a throwback to Final Destination. And I mean, really, 2010 was the capstone of the aughts. So, Nightmare on Elm Street following with him there also worked. So, Jeremy, why don't you give us 3 horror recommendations from the aughts?
So, my first recommendation is probably one that a lot of people have seen. I would think if you're deeply into horror, you're probably familiar with this, and that is the 2002 film May, written and directed by Lucky McKee.
Great movie.
This was kind of I feel like this was the movie that, for a lot of people, made Angela Bettis famous as well in the horror community. So she's the main character. She is the titular May here, who is a young woman who works in a veterinary clinic, and she's gone through a lot of like intense bullying and never really had any friends because she has this lazy eye. And her mother one day gives her like a doll named, I believe it's Susie in the movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it actually. Um, Telling her, that if you can't find a friend, you can go make one, and gives her this doll to be her friend. And from there, this May then is now an adult working, and she's trying to make friends. She wants to find a boyfriend and have a relationship and all these things. And from there, it just kind of devolves due to her awkwardness and her inability to like relate to other people. And we slowly watch this woman have a very slow moving breakdown, I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think this movie's great. I love this movie. I know you've seen it as well a
Oh
bunch.
yeah.
Okay.
I remember. God, this. So around the time this came out, what year did you say it was?
2002, I believe, was when 2002.
2002.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I would have. This would have been around the time that I went to my first horror convention, which was Horror Find Weekend in Baltimore. And I remember going up there, and there was advertisements for this movie because I think this was a direct video around mostly around here.
I
It
believe so.
probably
Yeah,
it probably had a theatrical run in like bigger areas, but yeah, around the small towns of where we're from, right to video. And I remember reading about it in like Fangoria and seeing it at this con, and not really knowing exactly what it was going to be. And then, I can't remember if I got a copy at that con, but I remember watching it with my roommate back then. So when I was first out on my own, and I just thought it was just such a cool psychological, like, really great performance by Angela Bettis, like really cool, unique premise. The ending is so cool and like dark and ambiguous, like just a lot of really, really cool stuff. And it's also one of those like one of the first movies I remember being able to really like see the like homages to horror in it, like things like they bring up like Dario Argento's trauma and like stuff like that in it. So it's like obvious the person making this movie was a fan of horror.
yeah. Because one of the guy that May kind of like falls for and likes is a guy who makes horror movies like in his spare time. It's like his hobby
Yeah,
is he's a amateur horror filmmaker. So he
played by
kind of talks
Jeremy
about these a lot.
Sisto.
Yep, and also like her the other kind of semi love interest, I guess, in this is her coworker Anna Faris actually, who
Yeah.
like um also has a relationship with her, and Anna Faris was great in this as well. This was right after she'd made the first scary movie, I believe, as well. So this would have been kind of when her career was taking off as well.
Oh, and it also has James Duvall has like a cameo moment in it too.
Yeah, he does.
Mhm.
Very briefly, I believe, as like he's the one she brings home, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
with the
So
Frankenstein tattoo.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So very, very fun movie. I highly recommend it. I think, unfortunately, this is one of those ones where Lionsgate has done this very stupid thing they've started doing where they have a Lionsgate limited run where you can only buy these Blu-rays direct from them. So if you want a physical copy of this, you have to buy it directly from Lionsgate and you can't go anywhere else and buy it, which is very lame in my opinion, but that's the way it is, at least in the United States. I know in Europe it has a easier to obtain Blu-ray release. Um, so that's my first recommendation. My second recommendation in terms of 2000s remakes that I actually enjoyed is 2005's House of Wax. This is a remake of the Vincent Price film from, I believe that original film was 1952 or 3 or somewhere in that range. This is a remake only in name, really. It has not a ton to do with that original film, other than the fact that the idea of a person making wax sculptures out of humans. But this stars Paris Hilton is probably the one that most people know. This was the most famous for because it was kind of a big deal that she was going to be in this. Other
mhm.
than that, it had Elisha Cuthbert in it and Jared Padalecki
Yep, from Supernatural.
from Supernatural, and Cry Wolf and the Friday the 13th remake and lots of
Mhm.
other things that we all know. But this is a group of teenagers who are
Oh,
stranded
isn't
near.
Chad Michael Murray in that too?
Yes, yeah, Chad Michael Murray. I think he's one of the main two people in it, maybe.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
he's
so.
in it as well. So yeah, this is a group of teens stranded near a old wax museum, and they must deal with the proprietor of this wax museum. Um, without giving away any spoilers on how that goes down. So, fun horror movie, fun remake. Has some of my favorite, has some funny moments in it. I remember one of the things that cracked me up last time I watched it was there's a scene where one of the characters says something like, "He looks like Elton John, only more gay," and the other guy's like, "Elton John is gay." And that shit really cracked me up. I was like,
That's
"Damn."
good. This is
So,
also an interesting one because it's like I think I remember if you mentioned this. Yeah, I may have spaced when you were, but it's like a remake really in name only. It's only
yeah,
kind of like the original with some of the
very
premises
loosely
like
related. Yeah,
yeah, very loosely related. But I do think the atmosphere of this one's really really cool. Like the setting, it's like weird little like backlot town made for like that is very very strange and interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this is one of those that I remember. Kind of like Final Destination when it came out. I was like kind of rolling my eyes at stuff like Paris Hilton, but then when I finally saw the movie, I was like, man, this is actually kind of a cool slasher movie. So yeah, this is one. If you
yeah.
haven't seen this one, it's really worth a visit.
Yeah, I remember not giving Paris Hilton much of a chance when she started coming into these movies and doing movies. I was like, "Oh God, Paris Hilton, this can't be good." I was like, I assumed that like this was one where it was like, so we've cast Paris Hilton in movies so that we can get financing, right?
Right.
Because she's not going to be a good actress. And then this and Repo both really surprised me with how well she did in those.
Yeah,
So
I think she's one
fun
of those
movie,
people you got to use for a specific in a specific way. But if you do that, it'll be fine.
100%. And now we like not to go off topic, but we know things now about Paris Hilton and her life that make her a much more sympathetic person than she was at this point in her
Sure,
in
sure.
the like um in the zeitgeist, because now we know that she was like abused and went through a lot of terrible shit that like kind of made her play these personas out in public.
Sure.
So much more sympathetic now, and won't talk shit about her like I would have 20 years ago this movie came out.
Right.
So third recommendation is probably one less people have seen than the previous two, and that is the 2004 film Skinned Deep. Um, this is a ridiculous movie. Um, it's about a family taking a road trip who have a flat tire, and they go to a convenience store, and this old woman invites them to stay with her and her sons while someone fixes their car. So we start off kind of like in a almost uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of family almost thing.
Mm-hmm.
The later entries. And then you meet her sons, and they are bizarre characters. You've got Warwick Davis as Plates, who is like over the top weird, and then you've got Brain, who is like this. You have to watch the movie to even believe this, because it's this guy with a giant fucking brain on top of his head, like a huge. His head is just massive brain over his head. It's insane. And then the last one is the Surgeon General, who, if you've ever seen this movie on shelves back in the day, he's the cover of the movie. He's this sharp metal jaw, teeth, and like these weird dark black like goggle things over his face. And from there, it just degenerates into pure insanity and murder, and you'll never guess where this goes as it keeps going. You can't. So I don't want to spoil it, but this movie just it's funny. It's a horror comedy, so it's funny, and it just is. Once it kicks off, it's insane for the rest of the film. It's bizarre. So
I
I don't know
remember
if you've seen
this.
this one.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember. I think what this is one of those ones where I was seeing advertisements for it in like Fango back then.
Yeah, I think they
This would have been
produced
like
it.
this would have been prime like time where I was reading every issue of like Fangoria, every issue of Remorgue. Um, so I saw these cool images like the Surgeon General and stuff like that, and I was like, man, this is going to be really cool. And then I finally got a hold of the movie. I rented it at the video store, and I don't think I realized at that time that it was almost going to be like a full moon movie in a way.
Yes.
It plays more like that, but like what Skin Deep feels like to me is somebody saw House of a Thousand Corpses and was like, I can do that. And
Yeah, kind of.
yeah, and so I think I was just looking at the timing on that because I want, and so House of a Thousand Corpses would have been the year before.
Yes.
So what I'm wondering is, yeah, because it's got some very similar vibes, but it kind of feels like House of a Thousand Corpses by way of like Full Moon or who's the guy who does like Brain Damage and Basket Case, Heinleiter.
Oh yeah.
It kind of feels like that. Like it's very low budget, very cheesy, very tongue in cheek and weird, and surreal. But like it's also very goofy. So this is one like while it is surreal, and it's not surreal like Lynch surreal. It's surreal like really like goofy, cheesy surreal.
Yes. Yeah, it's much more. It is much more Basket Case than David Lynch. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, it is fun. I remember thinking it was like okay. I need to actually. It'd be good to rewatch this. I probably haven't seen it since 2004.
Yeah, it's stupid fun. It's just it's so bizarre. And like I said, the guy when the first time you see like the character named Brain, you're like, somebody put that on a screen.
Right. It
Like really, somebody did that and thought that would be like a character that would make sense. So it's worth watching. I highly recommend this one. Those are my three.
Awesome. All right. I've got a few here. I think kind of line up. And I really wanted to try to pick stuff I thought was things that were really good that I think just are criminally underseen. So there are a lot of movies from this era I think are great, and like May was actually on my list to begin with, but I was like, it's funny. I get this weird, and when you're a big horror fan like us, I think sometimes you get a weird perspective, and you're like, oh well, May, everybody's seen May, but really that's probably right. I'm like, well, that's probably only true for like people who are really into horror. I don't think everybody has, but. So I tried to pick stuff again I thought was a little bit more off the beaten path. So the first movie I wanted to talk about is one I was just mentioning that first horror con that I went to, Horror Find. I saw this movie there, actually, which is a movie called Love Object. Came out in 2003. This one's directed by Robert Parigi and starring Desmond Harrington, who everybody will remember was in Dexter. He was, I forget the name of the character he's in Dexter, but he's like Dexter's sister's kind of cop boyfriend. But he plays the main character in this. It also has Melissa Sage Miller and Rip Torn. The plot here is an awkward copywriter develops a crush on a coworker, but loses the nerve to talk to her. Instead, he orders a realistic sex doll that looks like her and begins to have a strange relationship with it. One that eventually develops into him getting the confidence to actually make contact with a real woman, and they begin to date. He tries to get rid of the doll, but it may be harder than he originally anticipated. So this one is like a really like psychological thriller, dark. Like I remember, what's really funny is I remember this came out, and then I want to say shortly after this, that Lars and the Real Girl movie came out with Ryan Gosling, where he has like the sex doll that he's like is like his girlfriend or whatever. That one is like this Love Object is the dark, fucked up, perverted, like serial killer version of that movie. Whereas Lars and the Real Girl is like, oh, this is kind of sweet, awkward, like kind of movie. But this one is really cool. I think it has some like interest. I was really into movies at this time that were kind of is this person crazy? Because when you're watching this, through a lot of the movie, you have to ask yourself, like, is the main character insane? Has he created a persona for this doll that he's playing out a la, Norman Bates style? Or is this doll really alive? And then they kind of make you question that. And it kind of goes back and forth, and eventually, of course, they reveal the truth. I think this has one of the darkest endings for a movie like this. It definitely goes in a direction I think you would not expect in terms of, you kind of think how this is going to end, and it ends differently. Really, really cool movie, especially if you like those psychological, like dark kind of movies. It does have a little bit of a sexual element, but I wouldn't say this is anything that, you have to make like teenagers leave the room for or anything like that. It's just, it's not that crazy.
No, I like this one a lot. I do think the ending is like, it's one of those where I want to say it'll be shocking to you, but I feel like if you've seen the last if you've seen the last 22 years of movies since this,
Mhm.
there's so many things that now have done similar kind of endings
That's probably
that
true.
you might not be as surprised now as you would have been if you'd seen this in 2003 or what I
That's
think it's
probably
2003,
true.
right? That
Yeah,
sounds
you're
right.
yeah, it was 2003. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like if you go in know that like the ending was probably more shocking if you hadn't seen films since then because I do feel like
Oh,
this
yeah.
this is like um it was more unique in 2003 than it is now probably.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that for sure. But it's also one of those ones you just never hear anybody talk about it, and it's a really cool. I think it's probably kind of hard to watch. I think I saw it was on Tubi. Um,
Probably everything's on TV now. I feel
yeah,
like,
Tubi's such a good resource
but the
now for
ultimate
movies.
ultimate movie streaming platform.
Yeah,
I feel like at this point.
yeah. Well, all right. So Love Object, that was that one. Then I want to move on to 2006's Altered. This one was directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who everybody remembers one of the guys who worked on Blair Witch. And it's starring Paul McCarthy Boyington, Brad William Hinkey, Adam Kaufman, Michael C. Williams, Catherine Mangan, and James Gannon. And this one is such a weird premise for a movie. It's one of those movies when you see the cover of this movie, it's a very generic, like early aughts cover for a movie where it's got like this crimson red border with the word altar to the top, and then these kind of like spooky, like black claw, shadowy things like over a forest kind of coming down. And so it's very generic. You're really not sure what you're getting into when you rent this movie. But let me tell you, it's one of the more unique film premises I think I've ever seen. In that this is about a group of men who live in a very remote, like kind of rural country area. And it opens with them trapping and imprisoning an extraterrestrial, like an alien, like, think gray aliens that like come down in the spaceship, and like chaining it up in their garage and putting like a welding helmet on it. And then basically talking about how they're going to get revenge because you find out that years before this, they were all abducted by aliens who did like experiments on them and stuff and then dropped them off. And the result is one of their friends died. One of them died from what happened. But then also the rest of them have had like post traumatic stress and their lives have fallen apart because nobody believes them and all this stuff. So they basically set a trap this alien, and now they're like dealing with it in their garage. And it's really, really cool. Like the alien has these like kind of like psychic powers where it can like get into people's heads and sort of control them, and the whole thing gets real paranoid and crazy. And it's just a really, really fun, criminally underseen movie that like is just rednecks versus alien is a very weird. Sounds like it would be a joke kind of movie, but this is not a funny movie. So I highly recommend it. I don't know. Is this one you've seen, Jeremy?
I have not seen this actually. I was looking through it right now to see if I had, and I don't recognize this. I don't think I ever
Yeah,
watched this one.
yeah. I think you should check it out. I think you'd dig it.
Yeah, I'll have to download this.
Yeah. So that one's really, really cool.
Buy it. I mean,
And yeah, Eduardo Sanchez. Like I've kind of followed what he's been doing since Blair Witch, and he tends to put out interesting stuff here and there that I think a lot of people like. It flies under the radar considering how at one point in time he was one of the biggest names in Hollywood.
it is weird how the guys that worked on Blair Witch, like everybody that worked on that film, kind of didn't really ever seem to get the attention they deserved after it.
It was a little odd how that panned out. And it's sad too when you think of a movie that just made so much money and had such a huge cultural impact that like you would think that all these people would be household names. I have seen Joshua Leonard in several things. Like I think he stayed working, but
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the other guys I think they had a hard time. I know and I think there was a lot of stuff that kind of happened that was shady around the production and like what people got money for and what they didn't, and
That's
there's a lot
probably
of
true.
stuff like that was rough. So. And then lastly, the last one I want to, it comes in 2009, and this one is Hills Run Red. This one's directed by David Parker, written by David Shaw, who's like kind of the famous splatterpunk author. Also, I believe wrote the screenplay for The Crow, if I remember right, or was involved at least. This one stars Sophie Monk, Tad Hilgenbrink, Janet Montgomery, Alex Wyndham, and William Sadler, the great William Sadler. And the plot to this one is a film student obsessed with an obscure slasher film and its origins begins to track down the long missing director and finds that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. So this one reminded me a lot of the Masters of Horror episode Cigarette Burns, and that it was about somebody tracking down this kind of lost like horror lost elements of this horror movie, and like finding out there's a lot more like dark and mysterious things going on. This one is definitely more of a slasher movie, whereas Cigarette Burns is more of like supernatural like horror. But I think I just really like horror things that kind of have these like detective-y, sleuthy things going on at the front of it. Like either you go full noirish where you're looking at something like Angel Heart or Hellraiser Inferno, which this is not that. Or you just have these people like I'm digging into this like mystery because I think it's kind of fun to go along that journey with them and like discover the truth behind these like the creepy mysteries. Hills Run Red, I believe this one was one I bought a blind buy, if I remember right, on DVD when it released, because I had seen a couple of pictures from like horror magazines and thought this looks kind of neat. Saw it at like Walmart or something and picked it up and brought it home, and I just had an absolute blast with it. Definitely an underrated slasher with like weirder mystery elements. It has kind of an interesting like meta like vibe, talking about directing and movies and the industry, and like how like I think it also has some elements of 8mm to it, about like,
that.
like
Yeah.
missing people and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely more of a slasher movie than like a thriller. So if you like slasher movies, this one has at the time was a unique looking slasher, like a weird creepy like baby mask with like human teeth and stuff like on it. And again, one of the more like original premises for a slasher movie. So highly recommend it. William Sadler's always cool. He plays one of the bad guys. You can pretty much guarantee you're gonna have a good time with him. Do you have any thought? You've seen Hills Run Red, right?
Oh yeah, this movie came out at what I feel like was peak Netflix disc time in my life,
Yeah,
when I was just getting like, I don't know, I was watching 20 movies a week probably through Netflix discs, like coming in and sending back. So yeah, I like this movie a lot. I do think that if you'd walked in a video store at the time it came out, I don't think the cover did it a great service, because it did look like a lot of the same kind of generic covers that were popular at that time, I think, with like. So I think the cover didn't do this any favors in terms of selling it to people that weren't already renting B movies, at least.
Right.
But for people that did rent it, I think this is a fun movie that definitely kind of got lost in just the large number of these kind of films that were coming out between like 2000 to 2010. There were a lot of these lower budget slashers. This one didn't probably get the attention it deserved, so definitely good recommend.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring that up. Is now I'm realizing that now we have these streaming services, so these kind of direct to streaming, direct to videos. You're going to hear us say the term direct to video a lot, and that's just because that was from our era when we were growing up. A lot of horror movies just went right to the rental store for you to watch. They skipped a theatrical release, or if they had a theatrical release, it was very small, like around places like LA, and that was it. In the aughts, you'd have these movies. They kind of went direct to DVD, and this was also in a time when you either had to rent it from Netflix, or maybe a video store, or you had to just buy it off a shelf. And so I think some of these movies went unseen because of that, because that's not accessible to everybody if they're not huge film nerds like us. And so there was stuff like Hills Run Red. If you look at the cover, maybe it looks a little cheesy. Like, I'm not going to buy that. That might be one of those like $2 movies I buy, and I wish I'd never seen it shot in somebody's backyard or something. But this is not like that. This is actually a really, really cool, like, probably had a decent budget, but just wasn't the kind of thing that was going to be front and center, and you kind of needed to be in the know to find it. Whereas now you can listen to guys like us talk about it incessantly on the internet, or find them on streaming services. So it's a different vibe. All right, everybody. We appreciate you joining us this week. So we miss George, and he's sorry he can't be here, but he will be back next week for us to talk about The Troop, Nick Cutter's body horror novel about some kids trapped on an island with an evil parasite. We also are going to be bringing up, we are kind of officially beginning what we could a spooky season here on the podcast, and in general in our lives. We're big fans of Halloween and the fall and the time of year where all this stuff kind of comes home for us. So we've got a bunch of things planned for you guys, like special stuff coming up. Some interviews. We've got a movie challenge we're going to be premiering in the next. We're probably going to start talking about it in the next couple of weeks. It'll actually kick off, I think, like mid-September, like early to mid-September, where you guys will, we're gonna put out movie prompts and let you guys pick movies that fit those prompts, and then we'll all kind of talk about them in our Discord, and we'll talk about them on the show, the movies that we pick. We'll have a list of movies that we are personally watching together and talking about. Which you can absolutely follow along with us that way if you want. Or you can just use the prompts to pick your own movies that you haven't seen or things you want to revisit. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming up. We hope you guys will join us. So thanks for tuning in. And until next time, have spooky dreams.
Thanks, everyone.